NBC Sports Chicago, I was around a lot of people who had 20 years of experience covering these major teams. I filled in to produce White Sox games before I actually started the Bull season because I got hired in April, and obviously it was baseball season. So the learning curve was like a gut punch right out the gate.
Into another great week, another great conversation. I have Naomi Grey here, one of my good friends who we go back a while. We'll get to that, but she is the
Mhm.
Chicago Bulls pre and post game producer for CHSN in Chicago. Naomi, how are we doing today?
Doing good, not too shabby, no complaints. It's All-Star weekend, so a little break from, gameplay and yeah, much needed relaxation for sure.
So you're taking a bye week as well.
Right, exactly. We take a bye week with them, a bye week.
There we go. Yeah. So like I said, we've known each other for a while. Back to our days when I was in North Dakota, you were in Minnesota,
hmm
covering the Vikings games. I mean, how do you look back at that time?
Wow, it feels like forever ago, but then it kind of doesn't. Like it's weird. Like I look up and I'm like, if I'm looking through pictures and videos, I'm like, this is 2018, like 8 years ago now, and it's just like it's a blur, but it's not a blur. But it was a great time. I mean, obviously covering the Vikings in my first market was like an amazing experience. They were exciting team to cover at the time. Just a new experience. I worked in Rochester, Minnesota, which was like about an hour south of the Twin Cities. So, I would drive up every Sunday. I covered training camp and I did it all by myself. Sorry, my dog.
That's
Seems
all
like,
good.
but yeah, so it was a great time for sure. And I'm so happy I got that experience covering that team, and it just gave me a lot of insight to what that lifestyle is like beyond just like covering the local high school teams and things around the community.
You went from there to Alabama. How was that experience?
Oh, so Alabama. So after I left Rochester, I didn't work for like 7 months because it was 2020, and a lot
Oh
of
yeah.
jobs were, there were hiring freezes, and I would interview a bunch of places, but I wasn't the right fit, which we all hear so much in this industry.
Yep.
So I wind up getting the opportunity in Huntsville, and I was very grateful for that because, like I said, I wasn't working for 7 months. And obviously, Alabama, the football scene out
Oh yeah.
there is amazing. I love football. So I felt like it was a great opportunity. I felt like a lot of things were the same because I still was covering high school sports, still covering high school football, driving an hour to an hour and a half just to cover a high school football game. Um, and, I obviously also got the experience of being able to cover Alabama in the national championship in 2021. So it was like, there was a great range of opportunities I had, and being in the South was different. I remember like the humidity that summer, and I started in August, and I was like, "What the hell is this?" Like, it took me off guard. Obviously, I'm a New Yorker, and that heat out there, we ain't never seen that in New York. So I went from, it was a crazy like change of scenery. Like I went to like ice cold Minnesota
Yeah.
to hot as heck South Alabama. Um, well, it was really North Alabama, but yeah, regardless, it was a great experience. And I only stayed there for about 8 months before I decided to get another opportunity. I felt like I couldn't see myself there for much longer. Local news is very hard to deal with.
hmm
After a while, it's pretty strenuous. You're underpaid, and I just felt like I needed a new opportunity. So yeah, I only stayed in Alabama for 8 months, but it was a great 8 months for sure.
For those 7 months during COVID time, I mean, what did you do to just keep yourself going mentally?
Yeah, so I mean, fortunately, I was able to move back home with my parents, and I just realized how much life was going on in New York while I was away. And I have nieces and nephews, and just being able to see how much they've grown in the 3 years I was away, and being able to spend time with them was very like gratifying, and it helped me feel very rooted in everything I was doing, spending my time in New York. But I also did some like independent work. I created like a little series where I was just interviewing people, other reporters about their experience, kind of like what you're doing, and just to kind of keep me activated. I mean, active, I should say. And it was tough. It was tough for sure because you battle with a lot of thoughts of like, am I still good enough to do this? Like, why am I not getting opportunity? But fortunately, I have my family there to keep my brain occupied and not like slip into like some type of deep depression because that could come with the
Mhm.
job search. So yeah, I just kind of just spent time with my family and, looking for the next opportunity and just making the best of what I kind of had in my hands to deal with.
How did the opportunity with the Bulls and CHSN come up?
Well, I made a decision to leave Alabama without a job in place. And I was like, what? I'm just going to apply to things. Worst case scenario, if I have to work at a Target, I'm going to do it. But what I'm not going to do is stay here and be underpaid anymore and be doing all this work. So I'm going to set sail. So I applied to, a couple positions. And then originally the position I applied for was at NBC Sports Chicago, doing the same position as the Bulls pre and post game producer. Um that position just said producer. So I was like, I'm just open to doing whatever. Like, I'm cool with getting my foot in the door, and obviously applying for producer position, I knew that I was gonna have to take a back seat and not do any more on camera work. But that was something I was willing to risk, given my circumstances and what I wanted and how I wanted to excel in this industry. So yeah, like, my boss at NBC Sports Chicago took a chance on me. Did series of interviews. I was able to prove myself and what I could bring to the table. And obviously I have a producer background from my first market because I was a news producer and a sports anchor. I don't even know why they create positions like that because
Yeah, that's wild.
evening
Yeah.
news, sports, yeah, it was crazy. But I'm happy I got that experience. And obviously working in local news, you have to produce your own sportscasts, produce those 30-minute shows on weekends, so I had the experience of producing, never producing for a major sports team. So I think when I applied for it, I wasn't really thinking what I was getting myself into. Um, but I was ready for it, and I was fortunate to get the opportunity. And upon getting hired, they told me I was going to be doing the Bulls, and I was like, "Oh shoot, this is great!" Like, I didn't know what I was going to be
Yeah.
doing, but I thought, I found out I was going to be able to focus on the Bulls. And obviously, the Bulls have such a rich history. Everybody in the world know who the Chicago Bulls are, as a franchise. So I was just very happy that my boss at the time took a chance on me, despite me coming from an on-camera background and trusting me with that show. So that's how that opportunity came about.
Shout out Michael Jordan. It's his birthday today
Oh
as we
yeah,
as we
happy
record
birthday,
this.
MJ.
The goats, as we know.
Exactly.
Yep, yep. You mentioned just taking that risk, knowing this was more of a behind the scenes job, and you were like happy to be on air and things like that. So, what made you come to that like realization? Because that is a hard realization to come to.
I just felt like, I think that job search I went through in the pandemic, I just realized like this industry is so competitive, which I knew from the jump. And I obviously wasn't expecting anything to be handed by me, but I just didn't want to be told that I don't have what it takes anymore. Like, you're not going to tell me that my experience is not enough when I could literally do things that the people you're hiring have done. So I just was kind of like, F this. Like, I don't have a competitive bone in my body anymore to continue to prove to someone that I'm talented enough to be on camera. And I'm not saying you don't have to prove to someone that you're talented enough to be a producer, because obviously the work is still there. Like, it's still just as competitive. But I was willing to try different routes. I was willing to put being on air on the back burner because I felt like my confidence kind of got shattered after a while, where I was like questioning if I was good enough. And then also I was like, I don't want to get paid like crap anymore. Like, and obviously the behind the scenes position in a market 3 versus market 70, market 40, those mid markets, was going to be more paid. So I had to start thinking like longevity wise, like what is going to help me, get to where I am with my experience, where I feel appreciated and I'm able to, display my skill set and get paid for it.
Paid off for you now being part of a professional sports team. Like when you first started doing that job, what was that like realization for you? Like, did you feel like it was kind of big, or how did you just transition into that?
I guess I don't, for me, like even while I'm sitting here, I don't think it's a big deal. Like I think that, I'm so, fortunately to be as successful as a lot of other people around me. Um, you know, uh I just kind of took it with like, okay, Naomi, here's your job. Make sure you're doing it and make sure you're doing your due diligence. Like I would cover, a local high school team as, aggressive and, mindful as I cover the Chicago Bulls. So for me as a professional, I don't really see it as a difference. I just feel it as like, I'm very grateful for the opportunity. And I know what what rooms I'm sitting in compared to, other people. So I don't take that for granted. But, for me it's not a big deal. Like it's just, something I work toward, and I feel like I was, blessed with the opportunity that, I earned.
Doing that job for 4 years now, how have you seen yourself evolve in that role?
Oh, that's a good question. I've definitely evolved like completely. Like at NBC Sports Chicago, because that company dissolved. So now, I work
Mhm.
for Chicago Sports Network in the same position. But at NBC Sports Chicago, I was around a lot of people who had 20 years of experience covering these major teams. I filled in to produce White Sox games before I actually started the bull season because I got hired in April, and obviously it was baseball season. So the learning curve was like a gut punch right out the gate, because I covered baseball to the capacity of just like local news, reading highlights. Like I knew things like that, but obviously learning what pre and post games entail. And it's not for the average sports lover, it's for like the savvy sports, high knowledgeable people. Like you have to give more than just what you would give in a 2 minute news sportscast, excuse me. So, that like thinking about where I was when I first started at NBC Sports, and obviously like I wind up after baseball season, I went to my full time into my full time capacity doing Bulls pre and post, and I was just so blessed with the talent that I got. Like, and mind you, I was like 6 months pregnant when I when I started the basketball season. So it's like I'm like, okay, they trust this miserable pregnant lady with this basketball show, this irritable woman. And shout out to Jason Goff, Kendall Gill, Will Purdue. Those are my talent. While when I started at NBC Sports Chicago, and they were just like a pleasure to work with. They made my job so easy, and my bosses also and my coworkers were just so helpful with like anything I may have not understood to do in a certain way when it comes to like producing and stacking the show. If I had any question, they were there at their disposal. And it's not like I was just like on an island doing everything I wanted to do in my way. Like it was a collaborative effort from my associate producers, my production assistants, like it was such a team effort. And that just made it so easy. So it's like where I am now, I think I just know what I'm doing like the back of my hand, and I'm very sure in myself. And, when I first started, I kind of was like nervous. I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm cut out for this. Like, I don't know if I'm doing this well. Like, I'm working with a 4-time NBA champion, a 15-year NBA veteran, like, and, building a show for them. And I'm like, does my basketball knowledge like stack up to these legends in this sport? Like, how am I able to do this? So that's how I felt in the beginning, but now I'm like, yeah, like I know what I'm doing. I know how to make great TV, and I have, great people around me. So it's been quite the transition over the years, but I'm happy to feel the level of comfort and joy that I feel now.
Yeah, you mentioned, working with Kendall Gill. That's what you're still doing now at a CHSN. Working
Yeah.
with somebody like that, what are those production meetings like? Working with somebody like that and collaborating on ideas.
Yeah, KG is so great. Like, obviously, like you said, I've been working with him for the last 4 years. He always has ideas that he's bringing to the table. He knows that I stay on him. Like, if he texts me late, I'm like, KG, you're getting in trouble today. You have to do this. You have to do that. Like, we have such a playful relationship, and just the level of respect there from somebody like Kendall. He could walk in and just get a script handed to him and say, "Hey, go." But that's not him. That's not how he operates. He'll come into the newsroom, he's saying hi to everybody, he treats everybody with the same level of respect regardless of his background. And yeah, he's somebody who has quite the personality. He's literally down for whatever. Like there's so many times where I'm like, "Hey KG, we're doing this today. You're cool with these?" Like, "Yeah, that's cool." And that's just a dream to have, to have the opportunity to work with somebody who's not stubborn, who doesn't feel like, their stuff don't stink. And, I'm very blessed to have Kendall as my analyst on the show. He's great.
How much do you see that passion come out in him? Because he's not afraid to say, like, if the Bulls are playing bad, the Bulls are playing bad, you know?
Yeah, he has such, obviously he has so much knowledge of the game. And I think that he's always adding a different perspective. He's not someone who's going to go up there and yell, like, they suck. This is it. Da-da-da. Obviously that's just not how he's going to operate. He's able to bring that knowledge as a formal player that, us fans who, a lot of Bulls fans, and this is fans in any major city, they want to win right now. Like, they don't care. If somebody has a 20-point game and they have six turnovers, they suck. That's it. They were
Yeah.
horrible. And it's like,
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
I get what you're saying. Like, yeah, they didn't take care of the ball, but it really isn't the worst case scenario. And Kendall's able to add that insight and bring a different perspective that is so needed for a team that's trying to, find their identity through these years and, obviously not winning championships in recent years. So it's important to have someone who could add a little bit more than what the general fan just expects to hear.
What's that prep process for you going into those meetings? Like, do you have to have something already done, or how does that work?
Yeah, so the thing is, basketball games obviously happen like every other day. So there's not too much time in between when a last game happens. So it's basically you're taking what happened from the last game, you know, kind of recapping it, looking forward to what the game is that night. So my prep, I don't think my once the basketball season starts, like I'm never off my phone. Like I'm always on my phone. I'm always researching. Even days when I'm off, like there's always a little stat nugget or a trend that I'm realizing, like, okay, the Bulls have been shooting, lights out from the 3-point line. Let's take a look at their splits and let's figure out how we can make this a segment and break it down and what's working for them. And there's just, my mind is always kind of working on the next thing. So obviously I'm in the moment when I'm producing that day, but it's like if I see a trend in a player or something, or even league wide, like just things going on, I'm always just kind of creating ideas for segments in my mind. And honestly, on game days, my work day starts like when I wake up. Even though I don't have to come in until like 3 p.m. because the game is at, it's a 6:30 pregame. I'm up in the morning. I'm doing research. I'm tossing ideas to my host Cam Smith and Kendall, and hey guys, what do you think about these topics? What topics do you guys want? And it's definitely a collaborative effort. Some days I'll come up with 1,000 topics, and I don't need much feedback from KG and Cam, because we've been working together for a good amount of time where our thoughts just align. We've watched the games, we know what's going on. So and then sometimes they'll tell me like, hey, make sure we're adding this as well, like I really want to talk about this. Like, so it's just a collaborative effort, and the prep doesn't stop once the basketball season starts. It stops at the end of the season. So that's pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, during the game, talent always talks about, hey, we watched the game together. What are Kendall and Cam doing during the game?
So they sit down in the green room, and they're literally watching the game together, and sometimes they'll hit me up because sometimes I'm upstairs, like getting, things ready with my rundown, upstairs in the newsroom, and they're downstairs in the green room. And they'll text me like, hey, can we get that play? Hey, did you see this? So we're always checking in with each other. Sometimes I'll come downstairs, watch some of the game with them. And we're just bouncing ideas off each other as the game is happening. And that's the easiest part to the production once the game starts. Like, I think pregame is harder. I don't want to say harder, but pregame um needs a little bit more attention than halftime and postgame because the game writes itself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
the production just happens because we're literally talking about what we just saw. So halftime and pregame, those ideas just come together seamlessly between us. They tell us, like I said, we're all watching the game, so they'll tell me what was important for them and something that they want to discuss in postgame or halftime. Or I'll just say like, hey, this guy's going off, like we got to talk about him. Oh, this guy's struggling from here. The team as a whole is struggling. They're not sharing the basketball. They're not getting those points in the paint. Like, how are we gonna navigate the situation, be able to translate it, bring it to the fans in halftime and the postgame show.
How much does it change away versus home, because home you have the fans there in the background watching because the studio is at the United Center. How much does that change when fans are there versus not there, or does it not change at all?
I don't feel like it changes that much. Obviously, the atmosphere is great to be able to have the fans just right over their shoulders. For the pregame, it brings a different level of energy, especially for like, marquee games. We get a great crowd in the atrium. But I think that Cam and Kendall's energy night after night, whether they're home or away, whether it's a West Coast game and where our pregame starts at 9 p.m., like I feel like they're always bringing the energy. And as a producer, I don't even focus on, the fans in the atrium. Great to have them there. It's a great look, but my focus is on what Cam and KG are bringing and their energy and their personalities, win or loss, home or away, and that's something that they always bring across the board. So, I couldn't be happier with that when it comes to them.
When you put that headset on and that camera light hits record, what's your focus? What are you thinking about?
Oh, everything. Like there's not one specific thing. Like I literally like once the headset comes on, there's 1,000 things happening. Like, I need to make sure that, you know, the videos are in the right place. I need to make sure that the script hasn't moved. I need to make sure, like, you know, if there's a player warming up, let's take that player. Check in with my PA. There's 1,000 people in my ears, and I'm in 1,000 people's ears. So it's like it's a lot going on. But obviously, doing it for so many years, it doesn't. It comes like muscle memory,
Mhm.
but I don't think there's one thing I'm focusing on. Like, I think like making sure a graphic isn't misspelled is something that we focus on. But, I have a great production assistant who takes care of that. So I don't have to worry about that. My directors are great. So they're able to make sure the videos are good. There's no black frame while we start the video. Like everything's in place. Like, so it's not just me. There's other people around who are able to like provide what you guys see at home. And it's just me being able to navigate, make sure I'm staying in constant communication with those people while the show's happening. So I think I couldn't even tell you what my focus is on. I think my focus is on just like, I just hope the show looks good. Like, like it's on 1,000 things, but as long as the end result is great, I'm happy.
And through the producing job, you were able to also do some on-air stuff as well for Chicago Sky season. What is it? Gray Sky? Is that what
Oh,
the
the
segment's
gray
called?
sky. Yeah, the gray sky view. I did that last summer. And it was a great opportunity. I realized that, obviously this was our first year at Chicago Sports Network. Obviously, I realized there wasn't dedicated coverage to the Chicago Sky. And I spoke with my boss at the time about being able to do that because I felt like it was a great opportunity for me to be able to get back to something else that I love, which is being on camera. And, obviously the Chicago Sky, very interesting team to cover at the time. So it was a great opportunity. I just figured I was like, hey, let me just create a segment. I do this weekly. I'll go to the games, I'll go to practice, drive being there 2 hours way up north to their practice facility, and just cover the team. Like women's sports is important to me. Like I remember covering the New York Liberty way back like 2014 through 2016, covering the New York Liberty. This was still when they were still playing at MSG. So women's sports has always been something that I've had a passion for, something that I follow. So being able to come to Chicago and be able to cover the Sky was a great opportunity. It was fun. It was tough to cover because the team was struggling, but there were still great storylines in there, and it was a great way for me to knock off the dust and get back on camera.
Yeah, Angel Reese on the Sky, of course. We have Caitlin Clark in the WNBA. Don't know about what's going to happen with the season. They're still talking about that. But
Yeah.
just how have you seen those two athletes just really come to the forefront and like put women's sports where it is now?
Yeah, I mean, quite honestly, I think there's a lot of other, WNBA players who help create, the spotlight we're seeing now on women's sports. Obviously, Angel and Caitlin are bigger names, and they're media-driven, fan-driven rivalry that
Oh
doesn't
yeah.
really exist
Oh yeah.
created that. I just want to put that out there because whatever. Sometimes people like to put things together to make it more of a spectacle. But obviously, you hear those two names, everybody's very familiar with it. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of talent in the WNBA. There's been a lot of talent since its inception back in 1997, 96, I believe. Or I could have that date wrong, but regardless, since the early 90s, there's been a lot of great talent out there. And I'm just happy that they're finally getting their flowers as a league. I'm happy that women's basketball players are able to get endorsements and be able to make money, because they're not making money, unfortunately, on the court for their respective teams. So I'm happy that there's brands, and there's different ways for them to be able to make money. I mean, we see that with Unrivaled, and how the popularity it's been able to gain, and it being a woman owned entity, and obviously owned by WNBA players. So it's just great to see what's happening with women's sports, and they're really continuing to put themselves on the map, and it was exciting to cover them, and I hope I can
What,
do it this year.
yeah. What have you seen with the Sky? I mean, I know if we have a season, obviously, but what have you seen with the Sky and covering them, just from your viewpoint?
I just think that I felt personally that the Sky had a lot of pieces, but they weren't necessarily a puzzle that belonged together. I
Hmm.
felt like, you know, the talent wasn't there on a consistent level. We'll see splashes of it, but when you have a 10-win season,
Hmm. That's rough. Yeah.
it's not gonna suffice to what other competition there is in the league. And a lot of people are like, oh well, we have Angel, we have Camila Cardoso, and it's like they're not gonna be able to just carry this team on their back. And I think that they hopefully will take on maybe a more youthful movement in the future. And that's no dig at the players who are veterans. Obviously, they laid the foundation for this league in general, and their time in this league and their talent doesn't go unnoticed. But I think that sometimes when you get those youthful players by way of the draft, there's an added spark to the team. And if you're gonna, for me, I'm saying if you're gonna do a rebuild, rip it down to the studs. Get whatever talent you need, whether a few years are rough, and you guys are struggling to win, at least you're working towards something. And I think that's a direction the Sky should consider in these coming years. And obviously, having free agents, they're going to have to continue to rebuild. And the WNBA is like that. There's not much
Hmm.
longevity once you get on these rosters. Like, you could be there for a year, you could be there
Hmm.
for 7 years. It's just kind of unknown. Obviously, there's always a lot of movement in that league. But I think that what I seen from the Sky last season particularly, I definitely feel like it's time for change. And obviously we don't know what the future is going to be, if Angel Reese is going to stick along with that team. But I think if you have players like an Angel Reese, you have a player like Camila Cardoso, your modern day twin towers, like you gotta invest in them, you gotta bring them the right pieces. And if it's going to be vets, you got to make sure it's vets who are in a win now mindset and could actually add to the team and the future and transform the roster.
Yeah, let's get back to that. Candace Parker winning championships. Let's get back to that. Let's find somebody like that to be
Yeah,
honest.
exactly. That'll I know. Listen, Chicago's just like New York. They ain't
Yeah.
trying to hear about no playoff appearances. They want
Yeah.
a championship. That's
Yeah.
that's what the goal is.
Oh yeah. We already know that with the Bears season this year, but
Right. Yeah.
uh what are you expecting from the Bulls here the second half? I mean, they made a lot of trades at the deadline, trading some of the fan favorites, Kobe White, Vooch, Desumu, a lot of new faces. What do you expect here the second half?
Yeah, so the Bulls are obviously in a transformative time in the
Yes.
franchise, not
Yes.
just the second
Yes.
going into the second half season. I think that the front office is finally like showing how exhausting it has been to be in the middle of the pack
Mhm.
of the league. And when we see teams like the OKCs, the Detroit Pistons, even the Cleveland Cavaliers making, leaps and bounds in this league in the last few seasons, it's kind of like, all right, you got to start following suit. You got to start changing it.
Mhm.
So it's hard. It's hard seeing, Kobe, Io, especially, you know, going off to, greener pastures, because those were the players part of, the team that I first started covering. I think the only person that's left from when I first started covering the team is Patrick Williams. So it's very different having all these different players, and I don't expect much from the second half, aside from them trying to find their current identity just to
Mhm.
finish off the season. I'm not gonna say I want them to run the table and blah
Yeah.
blah. That's not for me. I'm also not from the city of Chicago, so I don't want to say I'm not a fan of the team. I obviously appreciate the team, but I'm not a fan. So there's not anything lying on
Mhm.
it for me. But I think that, the people who get paid to figure out the roster and, get this team over the hump are going to continue to do that. Fortunately, that's not, in my hands to do, but I think that, yeah, like I think it's time for them to get over the play-in hump that they've been in the last few seasons and actually become, a competitive team. And, it's up for AK to create a competitive roster. And, when you have pieces like Modest Buzelis, you have a Josh Giddey, there's
Mhm.
potential there. It's just finding the right piece of the puzzles. We're not even sure which of these new 7 players that have been traded to Chicago are going to still be here in the coming years, because obviously some of them are on expiring contracts. But I think there is, some talent. Like we have Anthony Simons now, and that's a very exciting player to, watch. And there's pieces there. I just don't get attached to these storylines because it's a business at the end of the day. And like I said, some of them aren't expiring contracts. Some of them could be shipped off in the off season. And I just know that the Bulls, obviously, with this recent trade deadline, was making putting an emphasis on the fact that they're ready as an organization for change.
Fans would agree with you. No more play-ins. We don't want that. You know.
Yeah, it's tough. It's so plans are so anticlimactic where
Yeah.
it's like, okay, we made it. Oh, that's it. We're out in the first round. Oh, we made it. We're out in the
And it's
second round.
always the Miami Heat. It's always.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, the Heat and the Bulls have struck up a play-in rivalry to say the least.
Yeah. Being in Chicago, you're from New York City, Brooklyn. Better to be back in a city now after grinding it out in all these Alabamas and Minnesotas of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, I'm not a small town girl. That's not my vibe. I appreciate it though. I've built friendships with people from those towns, and, people who have, were in those towns for the same situation I were. I think, Rochester and Huntsville, Alabama were great cities for the time being, but Chicago is more my speed. I think there's a different hunger. I think that the sports scene in Chicago stacks up with New York City. Obviously, New
Mhm.
York City's sports scene is better. I don't care what anybody got to say about that.
I won't get into that with you. I'll
Right,
stay away from
exactly. We
it.
don't got to do that. We don't got to do that competition. I'd be here all day talking about everything New York is better at than Chicago. But no, I have so much respect for the city. I've always wanted to come to Chicago. It's a great city. I feel like you're able to get the buzzing and excitement, but you're also able to get pieces of calm, and there's culture out here, and obviously smaller cities lack that culture and diversity. And Chicago's great, and I'm really happy to be here.
I do like New York pizza, but I won't say that it's better than deep dish. I won't say it.
We ain't gonna do that. Mm-mm. Mm. No comment. I
I'll just
plead
put
the
that.
fifth.
I'll just put that on the record and say I'm not hating, but I do
I,
like
I
New York pizza.
appreciate that. I appreciate that you like New York pizza. Some people are like, "Oh, it's terrible. It's cardboard." I just say, "Y'all don't know any better, so it's all right."
There we go. There we go. All right. If people want to follow you on social media, where can they follow you at?
Oh my God, that's a great question. I've changed my handle so many times. I'm like not on most social media, but I think it's at Nay Gray. And I don't even know it. You can figure that out. You'll find it and you'll put it like in a lower or something for me. I think it's
Sure. Yeah, I'll do that for you.
I think it's like
I
Naygray. Let
think
me see.
it's. I think I looked when I was like looking up stuff to talk about. I think it's Nigray.
Yeah, okay. So it's
Yeah.
Naygry_.
There we go.
There
Yeah,
we
I think
go.
that's what it is. Yeah.
That's what it is, maybe.
All right. Well, when you watch the Bulls pre and post game show, no Naomi is the one behind the scenes. Put it
Yes.
together for all you Bulls fans out there. Naomi, I appreciate you coming on and talking about it.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right. Enjoy the rest of your bye week here for the Bulls.
You as well.